Guess what the data said? There is a threshold, by the way, and it's very clear in the data. When they hit this number of dollars, the customers stop churning. You want to guess what it is?
Uh, Welcome to another episode of Customer Success Talks Real Challenges Experts Advice, the podcast dedicated to those transitioning into customer success and early career customer success managers. I'm your host, Byron Toruño, passionate about customer success, a customer success nerd, and I will never stop thanking you all for the support that you have been giving me since the beginning. And there's more coming. Today, we will be talking about churn, that scary word of just saying, oh my God, I feel that this customer is going to leave us. Or just going back to your manager or your team and saying, oh my God, I think that this big customer just left us. Or even worse, what happens when your manager comes to you and asks you for why does that happen? Isn't that scary? But it's part of our day to days as it's part of our lives as customer success manager, and we have a real churn doctor here with us. Who am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about Greg Daines. Tell everyone listening right now a little bit about your background and your story.
Sure. So I started my career as a founder CEO in SaaS B2B, and I continued to do that repeatedly. I was a serial uh, founder CEO, and several years ago, I was leading after joining a company. I was leading the customer success function, and I've become increasingly obsessed with this challenge because, of course, it's the fundamental challenge in the business, in any subscription business, is how long can we get customers to stay? And so, to me, it's the most interesting topic in business. It's all I want to talk about. I do research on it. I talk about it. I write, and so that's how I kind of made it here. Most people in customer success, like it's not you, like you went to school for that, right? You have. I love talking to people because they all have a different story of how they got there. That's how I made my way into becoming the churn doctor and being, focused on this whole topic.
And Greg, this is a big topic, and we will try to cover as much as possible today. But I want to start with the misconceptions. There are so many misconceptions about churn, and one of them being that customer success is the responsible for that. But the other one is something that I also want to focus on because your ebook called 23 Ways to Reduce Churn. And by the way, pause here, this ebook is going to be in the description of this episode. So please go and read it because it has a lot of data that is going to make you excel and understand how everything works and the dynamics and the trends. This ebook called 23 Ways to Reduce Churn says, you say, the biggest misconception about retention is that it's fundamentally based on customer satisfaction. What? And it's interesting because you have another ebook called Churn Guide, where you say our data shows customer satisfaction increased by 12%, good, over the last 3 years, but retention decreased over 22%. So, Greg, what are we doing wrong?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and it comes from an experience I had that I think you and your listeners have probably had many times, which is when I was working with customers, I'd have this thing that would happen where a customer would leave, and on the way out, they'd tell me what a great experience it was working with our company, and I'd be like, "Well, what? That makes no sense. Why are you leaving?" But then I also had the other experience, and again, you've probably had this experience where I had unhappy customers who were complaining and never satisfied, and yet they kept renewing their contracts. What's going on? That does, like, those two things don't make sense because we all just know the basic theory in business for 25 years has been that customers who are happy stay and customers who are unhappy leave. But that didn't seem to be my experience. So I wanted to test it. So I started gathering data. And then, of course, over the last 10 years, another kind of lucky thing happened, which is all the companies in the world basically adopted the same customer satisfaction scale, which is NPS. And so I've been able to accumulate what is now the world's largest database of customer retention data. And among other things, we can see what's the relationship between how satisfied customers rate they are out of 10 and how long they stay.
Mhm.
And it turns out there's no correlation whatsoever.
Huh.
Customers who give you a bad score, who say they're very dissatisfied, stay just as long on average as customers who say they're highly satisfied. There's no statistical difference between those groups. Well,
Mhm.
that makes sense of the experience I've been having, right? So, okay, there's a misconception, and that's kind of a big one because
Mhm.
it's fair to say virtually everything we do in customer success is based on the idea of satisfying the customer, giving them a good experience.
Let's make them
Well,
happy.
right. And I mean, from my point of view, we should make them happy. It just
Okay.
turns out that's not how you keep them from churning. That's not how retention works. It's not based on that. So, of course, it raises another question, which is, well, then what's it based on? If customers don't stay because they're happy, why do they stay? Right. And,
Yeah.
and in our data, we've been able to test all sorts of things, almost anything you can think of, how big they are, what vertical they're in, how much they spend. If you go get that 23 ways to reduce churn, we talk about a bunch of things that do actually matter. But there's one that is by far and away the best predictor of customer retention. Nothing even comes close, and that is results. Customers
Mm.
who get results, measurable results, stay on average 6 times longer than customers who don't get results. So if you're wondering, I have too many clients and I have too much stuff to do, how do I focus my attention? What should I be focused on? The answer is
Mhm.
for for sure, without any question. There's not even a second place. Your number one focus needs to be on how do you get your customers measurable results. Here's the other thing that's crazy. You think, well, okay, obviously, if they get fantastic results, they're not going to leave us. Maybe
Yeah.
sometimes they will, but mostly they don't. Actually, it's even simpler than that. It turns out, and you're thinking right now, oh, I don't know if I want to measure some of my clients' results and show them because they're bad, right? Well, we have that in the data. It turns out that if you show results to a customer and they're bad, they're not getting good results, they're getting crap results. It turns out those customers still stay twice as long as customers who you don't measure their results. And the question is why? Why would it, if I show you your results and they're
Mhm.
terrible, why would you
Mhm.
stay? Well, we've studied that. We've studied it extensively because it's a very consistent finding. And what those customers tell us is, well, at least you're measuring my results and trying to help me improve. I don't want to switch to another vendor who won't even measure my results and help me improve. So you see what they're saying. It's actually very sophisticated. Customers are smart. They're right to think that the CSM, the person who's going to help them by showing them the reality, is likely to be their best shot at winning. And that's actually true. So it turns out measuring the results is in some ways even more important than how much
Mhm.
results they get. You got to start
Mhm.
measuring, you got to find a way to show them how they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, with those results as well, it's a tool that we're giving our customers for them to advocate for us internally on their organization, right? Because that's the reason why they bought us, because they wanted to give results based on the needs that they have. So if they come to their stakeholders internally, and even better, if your advocate or champion is already the decision maker, is even better that that they have this tool for them to actually benchmark between the other services that they have and say, okay, this is the one. Especially at the end of the year when budgeting is actually a big thing. It's like where we all get nervous because at the end of the year they're planning for what budget is going to look for the next one.
Yeah, well, and this has been happening all the time lately, especially in this tougher economy, right? When they come to go through everything and say, "Hey, look, we've got to get rid of something."
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
they going to get rid of the one with proven results, even if they're modest? No, they're going to get the ones where everyone just assumed they knew what the results were and there's no proof.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
right. And so if you think about as a CSM, what are your scariest moments? That's one. They're going to chop some systems. I hope it's not mine, right? What's your best defense? Measured results. Even if they're modest, don't worry about how good they are. Turns out if you can show any results, they're very hesitant to walk away from those. Companies don't like giving up results, okay? But the second thing is, everyone knows one of your biggest risks is when your primary point of contact leaves,
Leaves.
right? Or the decision maker leaves. What do I do in that situation? Well, this exposes the problem with customer satisfaction even more. If I had made that last person ecstatically happy with the experience they were having, it just walked out the door. It doesn't mean anything anymore. The new person doesn't have that feeling. The
It's a new
only
start.
thing that person can leave behind is proof that this is working,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So your
Yeah.
best weapon against that risk is this. Does it work every time? No, but I will tell you from the data, it works better than anything else that we ever.
So the impact of those results are gonna stay there always. But then, how can we measure that, Greg? Because we're gonna talk more into adoption in a couple of minutes. But which are your top three key metrics that shows that the measurable results? I'm assuming ROI is one.
The data is very clear. Any results. So let me demonstrate this with a piece of research that we did that you'll find fascinating.
Let's do it.
So we
Let's
had
do
this
it.
huge data set where we could actually compare customers by how much results they got. In this case, it was measured in dollars. But your product, it might be saved time, it might be improved morale, it could be. It doesn't have to be dollars. But this allowed us to actually test something really interesting, which is
Hmm.
where's the threshold? How much results does a customer need before they feel like it's working and they stop churning,
Right.
right? That's the
Right.
interesting question. Now, the concept of ROI has an answer to that, but it's a theory. And the theory is it needs to be more value than they paid. Well, there's actually a problem with that, right? One is that a lot of things aren't measured in dollars. So how do I compare hours saved? Do I have to convert it into dollars and then make some assumptions? You can do that, but clients don't like that. There are
Yeah.
too many
Yeah.
assumptions. They will push back and barf all over that all the time. So I actually don't like ROI, and here's the research result that demonstrates this. We looked in there how many dollars. So it was a email marketing program, right? And the idea was you send out emails and people buy your sweatshirts or your stuff off your shop, right, or whatever. And the question is, how much money did they have to make for it to work? Now, one theory is more than they're spending.
Hmm.
Okay, fine, it
Hmm.
wasn't that expensive. That's one theory. The other could be a lot more than they're spending. Maybe their expectations are just a lot. I mean, they didn't buy it to I don't know, make $5,000. They bought it to make $50,000 or whatever it is, right? So that's another theory. Guess what the data said? There is a threshold, by the way, and it's very clear in the data. When they hit this number of dollars, the customers stop churning. You want to guess what it is?
Uh, no idea.
It's $1.
$1.
Yes. So here's the fascinating thing. What it turns out, think about your clients this way, okay? We often imagine that the question in their minds, particularly early on, or if they're considering leaving us, that the question is, does this thing work? Does your
Yeah.
product work? Is it any good? That's not the question that's in their minds. I promise you, that's not the question. If they wondered that, they would never have bought in the first place, and they would not still be on the phone with you. The question in their mind that's the real question is, will it work for us? Will it work for me? Will it
Mhm,
work for my
mhm,
company, for
mhm,
my business?
mhm.
That's the real question. And so the question is, when do they see the answer to that? When do they see evidence that it's working? And the answer is when they make their first dollar. And so we saw this in the data. They send out an email, one person or maybe a few would buy the thing, they'd see the money come in, and they would immediately say, this is going to work. Now I just need to double down and use it fully.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
honestly, when that first dollar comes in, they hadn't done much. They'd sent one email out, right? That was like, it didn't take much. So what happens is, and this is really important, if you understand what's really in their mind, they're looking for any evidence that it's going to work for them. Then when they see that come in, even though it's well below the ROI and it's well below their expectations, they're seeing the thing they really were looking for, which is it going to work at all for me? And then when they see that, then they start to say, okay, what would it take to get to the $50,000 or to get to that threshold? Now I'm interested. Now, Bayron, tell me what's next. How should I use? Then we're in a position to really get that client to go further. And it turns out at that minimum threshold, and we've seen this before with, like, if your software maybe helps people save time, 1 hour saved. It's just they need to see evidence that it's going to work. That's the real thing they're looking for. They're not looking for ROI. They're not. And even when they take it to their boss and they're in that conversation of, should we cut this thing? Even then, we do not find that companies use ROI as their primary metric. What they're looking for is evidence that it's working for us and producing results. And the threshold of that is way lower than you think. This is one reason why, when I said that if you show them bad results, they still stay longer,
Mhm.
it doesn't take much for them to see they're going to win if they just stick with the program. And in fact, it changes their behavior. When they see a little bit of results come in, they start to say, okay, what do I need to do now? Before they were hesitant. They wouldn't adopt everything. They wouldn't do all the things you were telling them they should do. Now they see results. It's like, okay, all right, tell me what's the next thing I can do. How can I improve this? And then you're in the right mode. That's what I call customer bonding. When they start to see that your solution and you in particular are part of their success equation, they really double down. They bond with you. They stay with you. And the data shows that customers, once they hit that threshold, stay many times longer. And those are your sort of long-term bonded customers.
That's amazing, because basically what you're doing is that you're motivating them. Like it's a minimum, not a minimum effort, it's actually a minimum result to start that momentum into, okay, now that we have that first dollar or that first 1 hour saving of our time, then what is next? Okay, then it's going to be $3 or $2, then it's going to be five, because of course, if this is the ideal customer and we have seen with other customers what they can do, well, you can also do that as well. But then something that I also want to talk about, Greg, here is the early indicators, because you have a quote and you said the key to preventing churn is to know the customer is failing before they do. So what that means, what I feel that that means is that we have to be one step ahead of the customer before after actually they realize that they can fail. So my question for you is, Greg, which are those early indicators that we as customer success managers can see to actually start raising the flags? Would it be negative feedback? Would it be missing payments? Would it be not answering our emails? Or is it there more?
Yeah. Well, those are all good indicators of failure, but they're lagging. They're too late.
Mm,
So we did another study, very interesting study. Well, we have a large data set that talks about how good we are at rescuing or saving customers, right? So once a customer goes red, what's the rate at which we can recover them and get them back and renew? And the answer is it's terrible. It's like 10% or less for most companies, right? So 1 out of 10 of our clients who go red are going to be saved, but it's worse than that, because I always wondered, I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you did actually get a customer to renew. If all the, everybody gets all hands on deck and we go after the customer, we promise them everything, we get them to finally renew. Did you ever wonder, oh, I wonder if that customer is really stable? They seem like they are, but are they? So we studied customers who'd been rescued. What happens after the rescue? Turns out their churn rate is double the churn rate of all the other customers. So even the ones we rescue, that 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 that we rescue, most of them will be gone in the next year or two. The whole point is you can't win if the customer's already conscious that they're in trouble. So that's why I say you have to know they're going to fail before they know. And you can imagine why that would be so great. If I knew the customer was in trouble before they knew, they still have a good attitude. They're still talking to me. We still have momentum. I can still take advantage of that. So I really do need to know they're failing before they know. Well, how can I know that? The things you just listed, those are all too late. They've already failed. So if you look at their utilization, their adoption, and it drops a lot, it's too late. They've already decided it's not working, and right. So it's a good predictor of churn, but it's just not early enough. I need early indicators.
mhm,
Okay, so
mhm.
what are early indicators? Well, one that's earlier than that is, are they getting any measurable results? That's a
Number
good
one.
one.
Mhm,
Okay,
mhm.
they might not know yet that they should be, and they're not. So that's still earlier than they've already given up, right? So, but there's even earlier things than that, because if the answer is that customers stay because they get results, that just raises another question, which is, why do some customers get results and others don't? Okay, so that's the interesting question, and the answer is the customers who change their behavior to take advantage of the way your solution produces benefits are the ones who get results. So it's about them changing their behavior. So there's your ultimate early indicator. Not only do I need to focus as a CSM most of my attention on getting customers to do the things that will lead to results, and then of course measure them, but I need to be conscious that if they don't, that's a good early indicator. So if I'm looking at, let's go back to my example of the email marketing company. We get them all set up, we configure everything, they're 30 days in and they haven't yet sent an email, or they haven't even configured an email. That's a bad sign. They're not
Yeah.
doing the thing. They won't get $1 if they don't send an email. And it turns out we studied their customers, and the vast majority of customers who churned never sent any emails. So they had my client, this company had missed the reality that the goal wasn't to get these people to do really cool advanced email marketing. The goal was to get them to
Then,
send the first email and make the first dollar. So the ultimate early indicator, the earliest indicator you can get is this customer's not doing the things that are the most important to get results. And remember, because making $1 or getting your first little result is the goal, that means I don't have to think of everything they should be doing in the system.
uh-huh,
I only have to
uh-huh.
think of the first things they're doing that lead to the first result. So I can really contain that. So the best early indicators are one or two or maybe three key behaviors that you know if your customers do, they'll start to get at least some results. If you focus on those and track those, you will essentially eliminate churn as a problem. There will always be some churn. There's no such thing as zero churn, but we just need churn to be low enough that it's not a problem for the business.
Yeah, yeah.
This set of activities where you identify what they should do, you show them, you track that, you help them do that, and you measure their results. That's pretty much all you need to do to eliminate churn effectively from your portfolio.
And Greg, would you agree that making sure that the first time to value it's present and reachable will be the first step to success?
Yes,
We,
absolutely. The
yeah,
first measurable
yeah,
value. So one of the
yeah.
problems with the word value, you notice I don't use it. It's the right concept, value. I only use the word results because the problem with value is too often we accept a definition of value that can't be measured. And it turns out our data shows if you're not measuring it, it doesn't work.
Mm,
So if you
mm.
can't measure the value directly, find an indirect way, find a proxy, find something you can measure. And then yes, how not just how long it takes to get to that first value, no matter how small, but also how much work is required from the customer. The more steps they are, the more they're likely to fail.
Mhm,
So I just
mhm,
want what's the shortest time, not to ROI or to good value, to any results. And that's what I get to focus on. So in the case of this email marketing company, we took their 30-day onboarding and we made it a 3-day onboarding. What did we do? The goal was just to get the customer to send one email.
mhm, mhm.
Why? Because someone was going to buy their sweatshirt and they'd make $1. And then what happens is they come back and they say, oh, wow, this is going to work. What else do I need to do? Then we finish the onboarding, if you want to call it that. But the whole point is shrinking the time and opportunity for failure to the minimum level to get the first measurable result. That's powerful. If you have a customer that's not new, like you've inherited an older customer and they don't have a measurable result, let's figure out what it is and find the fastest way to get to where I can show that to them.
Yeah. Let's give them what they came for.
Right. And
Let's
it's
give them the
funny.
results.
It just seems so obvious, right? But it is obvious. And in a way, I think this is it changed my career. So I had this experience with what the worst customer I ever had was Apple. And they were my customer for many years. And I was in Silicon Valley and I was over at their offices all the time. And they were difficult. They complain, they're angry, they're frustrated, nothing's good enough, always unsatisfied, always demanding. Paid us a lot of money. So I had a hard time, firing them. So I couldn't do that. But I did get very frustrated. And I was in a meeting and I don't recommend you do this, but I got pretty frustrated because they were pretty brutal. And I actually said to them, look, if you hate us so much, why don't you just cancel? And the guy
Wow.
looked confused. Yeah, don't do that. He looked at me confused and he said, why would we cancel when you get us such great results?
Boom.
And I was embarrassed because why did I think it was about anything else? Where did we get this idea that we were in that room together that day, spending lots of money and time to make each other feel happiness? That's not why we're in business. They want a result. They were getting it. They wanted more. They were demanding more. But it turns out they never churned.
Yeah.
They were our
Yeah.
biggest, no matter how unhappy. So one thing I recommend to people, especially who are starting their career in CS, right? It's very easy to get caught up in the emotions of a difficult customer. They can be very brutal. They can be mean. They can be unhappy. They can send all sorts of signals. Our data shows, this is going to shock you, but I promise, try this out
Again,
with your own
you want to chuck
portfolio.
us more?
Yes. It turns out in the business to business SaaS world, at least, and it turns out there's evidence this is true beyond that, those dissatisfied customers actually have higher success rates and longer retention rates. So here's how we tested it. So we took a large set of customers and we divided them into two groups: customers who'd had negative experiences and expressed frustration, and customers who hadn't had any negative experiences. And all we do is we say, what's the average lifespan of those two groups? And it turns out the customers who've had negative experiences stay more than twice as long as customers who've only had positive experiences.
What?
Now, what's going on? Well, obviously, negative experiences are not causing them to stay longer. Something else must be happening. We'll go back to what I said before. If it's clear that customers who get results are the ones who stay, here's a simple hypothetical. Customer A is likes your software, but hasn't really tried a lot of it, hasn't done much, hasn't invested the time to do the training, isn't using it very much. Customer B is using it a lot and running into all. Which of these is going to run into more problems? The customer who's using it a lot. But which customer is also more likely to get results? So it's not the negative experiences that cause customers to stay longer. It's the results. It just happens that customers frequently who run into problems are the ones who are trying harder. They're the ones changing their behavior. They're the ones most likely to discover what's wrong with your product, what its limitations are, to get frustrated.
They're breaking the product, but it's because
Right.
they're using the product.
Exactly right. And so what I didn't realize is that client was sending a message all along that I was misinterpreting. And that message was, this is really important to us, and we're using the heck out of it. Those are both signals that they're a winner. So it's easy to get emotional and frustrated and hurt when you're dealing with these difficult customers. But guess what? Take it from me, they're the least likely customers to churn, even when they promise they will. Even customers are saying, we've had it with you, we're going to look around. That's not a great sign, but it turns out they're still going to stay longer than a different group of customers who you're not talking to, who aren't spending that much time. Customers who seem green are very frequently red. And so when we look at our so-called red customers, are we really sure they're leaving, or are we just sure, or what are we hearing is that this is important to them? Because if it's important to them, they don't tend to leave. So the critical thing is to find a way to measure what matters. But I will tell you, the most important thing to measure, you do want to track their adoption and their behavior change. So that's really important because that's the leading indicator. Find a way to figure out where they're at, if at all possible. But don't wait for data to appear. Find a way to do it. And what I found is that if you can do that and then find some way to measure results, that will make the difference.
And Greg, would you agree that making sure that the first time to value it's present and reachable will be the first step to success?
Yeah. So typically, the biggest problem in measuring results for customers is that they don't even know what they are. Some customers do. Many of your customers don't. And that's actually a risk indicator that's very early. I already will make an account red if they tell me I'm not really sure what our goal is. That if they can't tell me what their goal is, that's bad. But I can also help them with that because our product only does so many things. So one of the things I'll do is say, well, is it this? Because this is a common thing our most successful customers are looking for. And very frequently they'll say, yeah. Or they might say, no, it's not that. It's not make money, it's save money. Oh, okay. So then is it this? So you can lead them to that. But it is extremely important to have a measurable result that they think is theirs. I can't just show them some, we found that it doesn't work all that well to just come back one day and say, look at your results, where we didn't even check if that's the thing they want. We have to at least get them to align with it and say, yeah, that's what we're looking for. So if they don't have the answer, lead them to the answer, but they still need that. So that's the front end. That can be a very quick conversation. If you want to learn more, on my website, I have this thing called the CRS guide. It's a customer results strategy. It's a simple way to have this conversation in 5 minutes with a customer to get to that answer without building a whole success plan and all that stuff. So you have to have that. Then you say, well, if that's your result, now I do the most important thing I do every day, which is motivate them to change their behavior. If you want that result, these are the 1, 2, or 3 things you have to do to start getting results. Oh, really? I have to do that? Yes, you do. What if I don't? Then you won't get results. Okay, good. Show me how to do it. Yep, I'm happy to show you. Guide them through the behavior change and then show them their first result. It's like this thing. You can do that with a brand new customer because it's obvious how you do that. But you can do it with an older customer too. If I inherit a customer, I might say, hey, it doesn't look like we've ever really aligned with you on what this is for. Can I just spend 5 minutes connecting with you on that? What are you trying to achieve? What's the business case for our software? What are you trying, what's your goal? How will you know when you've won? That's my favorite question. Looking forward 6 months or a year from now, how will you know this was effective? And they're frequently going to say, oh, I don't know. I hadn't thought about that. Maybe it's this or it's that. And you get to have a great conversation and you can then come to an understanding. Very frequently, I'm kind of teaching them a little bit. Look, this is the result that most of our customers are looking for, that customers like you are looking for. Is that it? And then they, oh yeah, it's kind of like that. So We get to that conversation where we get clarity around that. So okay, let's figure out how we can measure it. Well, we can't measure it directly. What if we tried this thing? And the goal is anything is better than nothing. Have that conversation, then use it to motivate them to change their behavior in simple ways, then show them results. After that, their
Mm,
whole relationship changes. Now they start to see us as a key part of their success, and they start to ask you, hey, what else could I do? Like, I'm still not happy
yeah.
with these results. What's my next step? What are the best
Mm.
customers doing? Share me the secrets. Boy, when you're in that conversation with a customer, they're a customer for life.
Everyone out there, please pause, go back, and rehear everything that Greg had said today, because I think that it's just on the dot, on the point, on the center where we want to get as customer success managers to start preventing churn, not when it happens, but actually being months, years ahead of that. And Greg, unfortunately, it's time to start wrapping up today's episode. The last question that I have for you, Greg, is when has been a time that you messed up, or when it has been a time that you fucked up, and what did you learn from it? Because we don't want to do that mistake.
Okay, here's a big one for my life as a CSM. So hopefully this can be relevant to a lot of people listening. For years, I mean, I wasn't a CSM. I was actually a CEO for a long time, and then I was a head of customer success. But you know what happens is you inherit the difficult customers, the ones that are
Yeah.
complaining, they get escalated. And so here's a bad mistake. For a long time, I was very focused on the product. Okay, that they had complaints, this thing doesn't do this, or it does this wrong, or it breaks when we do this, and they were all true. They were like, none of them were made up. Like, if you look at your product and you look at the complaints that are coming from your customers, they're real. Here's the mistake I was making. I was blaming the product for the problem because that's what the customer was doing. But when I flipped my view and I said, wait, all that really matters is results. If this product is so bad that you can't get results, then
Wow.
why do I have 20 other customers who are getting results? How is that possible? It doesn't make sense. So I started to look at myself and say, maybe I'm missing it. Maybe the problem is me. So I started to go to these customers and say, yes, these are important problems, but let's also make sure you're getting results, because that would be really bad if you weren't getting results. Can we measure that? And you know what happens nearly every time? We discover those customers are getting results. Does it mean they are ecstatically happy? No, I already told you, don't wait for happiness from your customers. But what it does
Mhm.
mean is they would often say, "Oh, I didn't realize that. I was only hearing how bad the product was. I didn't realize we were getting results." So that was me blaming. So what's the biggest mistake you can make in life? Blame others. Look at yourself. Say, if here's another mistake: blame the customer. They're not doing it
Oh,
right.
that's
They won't adopt.
popular.
They're useless. They're lazy. They're stupid. They're idiots. By the way, probably true. It doesn't matter. The question is, what have I done to make sure they have everything they need to succeed? Have I really
Mhm.
done that? Did I think the training would be enough? Did I think that, just telling them they should do this? No. What have I invested to make sure they've been successful? When I started to turn it back on me, my whole life changed. My success with my clients was transformed. So blaming is always the biggest mistake. And of course, I've fallen into that trap like everybody else. So don't do that anymore. Don't make the mistakes I made.
Don't do that. Breathe, take the time, talk to yourself, and then act. Greg, that's amazing. Thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you for all the insights. And
My pleasure.
this has been an amazing episode, as all of the ones that passed and the ones that are coming as well. Everyone there, thank you so much for your time as well, taking the time to listen to today's episode. And of course, always remember, keep learning, keep growing, and let's keep improving the world of customer success. Until next time.
Bye bye.